Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to this Astrology, Human Design, and Jinkies channel with me, Tan, your astrologer, human design guide, and Jinkies reader. So before we get started looking at Jinkies 60, I'd like to let you guys know that I now have a TikTok account, so do check it out. Links in the description box below. Follow me. Let's be friends on TikTok. And if you're interested in getting any kind of services from me and my team, whether that be any kind of readings or art products that I have available, then do check out my website, tanastrology.com, and see what feels good for your soul there. So yes, today we're going to be looking at Jinkies 60, Human Design Gate 60. If you're new to the Jinkies, then do check out an introduction video that I've made. Links up above in the description box below. And then you can come back and watch this video after you have a comprehensive understanding of what we're talking about today. All right, so we're going to begin by doing a quick overview of Jinkies 60. So Jinkies 60 spans 26 degrees, 22 minutes of Capricorn to 2 degrees of Aquarius. So it's a Capricorn-Aquarius cusp. It moves from the shadow of limitation to the gift of realism to the siddhi of justice, the cracking of the vessel. I love this Jinkie. I think this has got to be one of my favorite Jinkies out there. This, the dream arc vision key bird is the cuckoo. And this bird just makes me smile. The life key animal is the hippo, and the fear key underworld is the crocodile. In the codon ring, this gene key is part of the ring of Gaia, and it's associated with the amino acid isoleucine. I hope I pronounced that correctly. In the 64 I Ching hexagram, this gene key is water over lake, limitation. Without the proper container, the ritual of love spills its precious nectar. Oh yeah, I love that. The programming partner of this archetype is a Jinkie 56, and I would highly recommend that you also check out the archetype of your programming partner as well, because that would offer a balancing, complementary energy to what we're going to be talking about today with regards to Jinkies 60. And Jinkies and Gate 60 is located in the root center in human design. It's connected to Gate 3 in the sacral, forming a channel called the channel of mutation, moving from the shadow of depression to the gift of mutation to the siddhi of glory. So, like I said, the cuckoo bird always makes me smile, and it's an amazing symbol of justice. So we're going to look at that first today, because these Jinkies can be associated with a particular archetype in nature, specifically bird archetypes. And here, this Jinkie 60 is associated with the cuckoo bird. So the word cuckoo itself stems from the Old Norse, meaning fool, and now we sometimes call a crazy or insane person cuckoo. So the cuckoo bird is, of course, known for their call, their very unique call, but also for something called brood parrotism. So what this means is that the bird lays eggs in the nest of other birds. So the cuckoo is not the only bird that does this, and not all cuckoos do this, but most of them do. And very few birds do this. And the cuckoo is a symbol of that. So the cuckoo never actually raised their own offsprings. And cuckoo chicks also, they usually, just as they are growing up, when they came out of the egg, they would heave the host bird's eggs, the host chick's eggs, out of their own nests, so that they could survive in the host's nest. Now, however, it's not like the cuckoo's mother just flies off and does something else. The cuckoo mother does watch and stay around to observe and see if the foster parents are feeding their child correctly. So you may wonder why the cuckoo does this. The ones that do this, they do it because behaviorally and physiologically, they could not, or they're incapable of brooding their own eggs and raising their youngs. So they're just not able to do it in their physiology and in their behavior. So therefore, they have to borrow the nests of other birds. So you may look at this situation and you may think it seems cruel. It seems not right. It's like the cuckoo is some kind of mischievous thief, but that's really not the case, because we have to understand that this is nature. Nature finds its balance in this way. However we may look at it, whatever nature has in store for the cuckoo and for the bird kingdom, it's a part of the process of nature. And I like this association of this bird with justice as well, because the cuckoo is doing itself justice in this sense. And it is in alignment with the nature of things in order to find this justice. There's just this undeniable association with the nature of things and how the cuckoo is finding justice here. So if you have this particular archetype, you are going to be somebody who we can say is, your life is going to revolve around justice in one way or another. Whether you feel like your life is not justice and it's not fair and things are not fair and you're trying to change that in your life somehow. You're also somebody who's very realistic and practical by nature. You have a lot of common sense about you. Now, you can also have the extreme, the other end of things here, which means that you're somebody who doesn't have common sense and you live in a world where you're constantly feeling victimized by things in your life, and like life is really just not fair, but yet you can't do anything about it or don't know what to do about it because you don't have the practicalities or the realism or the structures in your life to do. You don't know how to create structures in your life that helps to facilitate the situations that you have. But of course, you can be somebody who knows how to work with structures and can use structures to create truly magical things and manifest quite beautiful things in your life as well. So of course, as with all archetypes, we're going to look at the shadow frequency here first, which is called limitation. So Richard Rudd describes limitation here as closed circuit thinking. I love this because I know quite a lot of people in my life who have Gene Key 60, and I do see this closed circuit thinking within them, and you can't really do anything about it, right? Because if somebody's in a closed circuit thinking, they're not going to even listen to you when you talk to them. But I just noticed this, and I think it's just like a switch, that needs to be turned on somehow, and then a lot of things can change. But it just depends on whether the person is going to turn on that switch or not. So closed circuit thinking, or the shadow of limitation, is the opposite of evolution. It is what is called devolution. So it's something that stops evolution from happening. And Richard Rudd also associates limitation here a lot with red tape. So this happens, when we have a lot of red tape, when we have a lot of things that are limiting us, it is coming from a distrust in the flow of life, and sometimes a distrust in the flow of evolution. And this manifests as somebody who is unable to break out of set structures and systems that they are locked in. When we are too over-reliant on structures and existing systems, we are unable to get in touch with magic. Oh, I love that we're talking about this Gene Key right by my altar where I do all the magical creations. Magic refers to events that do not follow any sequential orders or any explainable laws. It's spontaneous, mutative, predictable, and uncontrollable. The shadow of limitation is the greatest critique of magic, and it prevents anything original from occurring. So there are There's three types of limitations that we're going to talk about today when it concerns the shadow of the 60th Gene Key, and that is, number one, the limitation of human laws. So laws, legislations that we have currently set in place in the world to maintain law and order, criminal activity, is the first limitation. The original purpose of laws that have been created is for the purpose of protecting people from injustice or criminal behavior. However, sometimes these structures and limitations become so bogged down in and become so rigid that they cease to operate efficiently and fairly. These structures and laws and rules, when you're stuck in them, it prevents you from doing what it is that you actually desire to do. It strays you away from the original intention behind doing something that you want to do. Economy and money is some of the greatest limitations that we have created in the world. But the thing is that all structures will eventually decline. I mean, if you look at the greatest empires in the world that used to be a great empire in the world, they've all come to their decline. Structures are an essential part of life, but they are also expendable with regards to time. The problem with this first type of limitation here is that it creates an over-attachment to the structures that it kills away the spirit or the juiciness of things, the magic behind certain things. The second limitation that we want to talk about today is the limitations that we have created from our past, about our past. Like, for example, outdated mindset is an example of this. It's outdated mindset that we still somehow use in the modern world, even though the human evolution has outgrown those mindsets. So an example is a school system where children are taught to be sitting behind a desk and remain disciplined at an age or a stage in their life when they would rather be out playing in nature, running around, using their energy in that sense. The homogenization of children in school is an example of an outdated system or structure. Because these, educational systems were created at a time in our life when we need to mass produce workers in the world. And so the original schooling techniques and methods were created in that way that's not really catered to any individual. It was just there for the purpose of producing human beings or educating human beings so that they can, so we can have more people working and driving the economy. But that's not how the world operates anymore. People are becoming much more individualized than they ever were. But somehow the school system still remains the same. This kind of structure that is outdated, but it's still there, and there has been no upgrading of it, creates revolutionaries and reactionaries in a way that may not always be healthy. Another example of a limitation of the past or an outdated mindset is religion and moral laws. There's also something called a cosmic moral law that need not even be implemented, that just exists within all of us, that we human beings cosmically know inside all of us what is right and what is wrong to do. What causes suffering to another is something that we shouldn't be doing. That is just innate within all of us. But we create relative laws, we can even say, these material laws in terms of morality that makes human beings question or feel forced to have to follow them. And so we, our cosmic laws that we know inside of us gets confused, and we question that and we doubt that, and we want to react against these other moral laws that have been created. And of course, the more moral laws that we create in the world, the more we have reactionaries against these laws, and the more that we have to try to control these reactionaries and try to police them. What has the world become? When we try to take every word in, for example, the Bible or the Quran or these religious texts literally, this is when we get into limitation. We restrict the human spirit. Like I said, as human beings, we do not need to be told what is right and what is wrong. We have the means within us to determine this for ourselves. These some religious texts that have been written many thousand years ago have never been adapted to suit the modern day and age. That is what is causing a devolutionary force within all of us. It's pulling us away from evolution. It's trying to pull us back to a time and age that we used to be before, although we have completely outgrown that, and there is immediately this resistance. There is no realism here, and there, of course, there is no justice. The third type of limitation that we're going to talk about today is the limitation of the human mind and thinking. We human beings think within a certain mental structure, and we become comfortable with those structures. And of course, this is what Richard Rudd says is one of the heaviest limitations out there. And this limitation is what is causing all the other limitations before, is that we go in these closed circuit thinking. We don't know how to think magically. We don't know how to surrender to magic. So an example of this is a really easy, foundational example, is something happens in your life, something bad that you didn't expect to happen. And the moment it happens, you're thinking, why is this happening to me again? Just thinking that, and you thinking that again every time something undesirable happens in your life, and you go back to, why is this happening again? That is a closed circuit thinking within itself. Or maybe every time that somebody that you like does something in the world and you think this person is amazing, they're so talented. Every time they produce something, they're so talented, they're so amazing. That is also a closed circuit thinking. It keeps you in the same mental loop, mental structure. And I cannot tell you guys how many times I see this happening in the world and in the people in my life and even in the spiritual community. And you know, I'm going to share this with you guys that one of the reasons I do astrology is because I want to stop the or put a new spin on the way that people see and do and think about astrology, which is very much closed circuit thinking. You know, the zodiac interpretation that is put out there, it's always the same. When you go to 80% of the website, Aries is spontaneous, Aries is impulsive, Taurus is slow, Taurus is loyal. It's always in this closed circuit thinking. And I'm like, come on, how true is that really? And what is this word that we use that we keep coming back to? What is really the meaning or the substance behind these words that we actually use? What does it really mean to be loyal? What does it really mean to be spontaneous? Nobody ever goes further than that. And it's because you've heard it from somewhere else. So you come back and you say the same thing. And we go in this loop, this structure. The mind follows a similar pattern of thought, going around and around and around, without the ability to think beyond them. And that's why I love combining gene keys and human design with astrology, because gene keys and human design helps to break that loop of thinking that astrologers who don't use human design, the gene keys, are not able to break out of. This is honesty. I'm talking with you guys from honesty here, that there is this loop when you see the way that astrology is being interpreted. And that's why there's a lot of websites out there that I don't even go to, because I'm like, you're giving information out there that is coming from all of the other websites. What new or innovative thinking are you infusing here? You're not helping people to think more or think broader. You're just saying and reiterating the same things that was coming from another website. So when we have the repressive shadow of limitation, and of course there's a repressive and a reactive, and you're going to go back and forth between the two. You don't just have one or without the other. So the repressive shadow of limitation is what is called unstructured. So this is when your life doesn't have a lot of structures. We can put it simply like that. And this causes maybe physical problems to happen in your life, maybe health problems or diseases, or sometimes psychological functionings in the body to go wrong, because you are not able to create harmony in your life, because some structures are important for us to create harmony in our life, right? But without structures, your life becomes inharmonious and you're out of alignment with your true nature. Your body is out of alignment with its true nature, and you get health problems. You just seem to kind of be adrift in the world, and your potential seems to go wasted because you haven't created any kind of structure or container in which your potential, your gifts, your talents can bloom. You never seem to be involved in anything that lasts because you just kind of keep changing the situations or the circumstances in your life. And it prevents you from finding the correct allies or the right people to work with or to be partners with you in your life. There is no environment for the goodness of you and your gifts to bloom. We can also have the more reactive shadow of limitation, which is what is called rigid. So this is when you are completely, controlling of anybody who questions you and the things that you do or say. You cannot allow that to happen. This can also manifest as like extreme sensitivity to criticism or feedback, or these kinds of things, like, oh, maybe you can do this to change or to improve. It just triggers you so much. If anybody crosses you in any way, you lash out in anger. There's too much reliance on structure that the spirit or the idea within something is completely lost. You assume that any new idea, any constructive criticism is a threat to your security, and you react accordingly to that. So how can we turn this shadow of limitation to the gift of realism? And what does that really mean, the gift of realism? So the gift of realism is really powerful because it is all about the law of manifestation. It is about manifesting something into the world of form. You are a master manifester if you have this one and you're in the gift of realism. You know how to balance youthfulness with wisdom, structures with idealism. You can have a wonderful idea, but without realism, without structure, they will probably never amount to anything. So ultimately, realism is the gift of common sense. With the gift of realism, you understand that if anything new were to take form in the material world, it must follow certain laws. Innovation without structure simply will not last. And a really great example of this is architecture. When we look at architecture and we see some buildings that are, like maybe it's Gaudi, or the construction of skyscrapers, for example. How did they do that? Like if you look at some of these architecture, like many hundreds of years ago, you would never think it was possible, but it is possible because they followed certain laws, and architecture itself is a structure. But you can maneuver, you can adapt, you can adjust, manipulate those structures to create something new that people never thought was possible. But you can't do it without understanding the laws, right? Engineering, for example, if you want to create a really wild structure and you don't understand engineering, the building's going to collapse. You also understand with the gift of realism that there's a great deal of red tape that has to be tackled with in the world, and you understand that you might have to do them. With the gift of realism, you understand that you have to work within the laws, existing laws and traditions of the world, and introduce change through them rather than in spite of them. The gift of realism masters the ability to create emotional structures, physical structures, spiritual structures, mental structures that are a container, a vessel, a holding station for new ideas and new energies to bloom. You also have the ability to understand that the existing initial structures may one day die and be demolished, but the inner spirit within it has to live on, or find a new structure in which to carry it. Richard Rudd says that the gift of realism is about maintaining the balance between the idea of reaching the moon and the huge physical and economical requirements needed to actually make that idea a reality. Realism, in any sense, always involves magic. The only thing that's needed for magic to actually occur is some form of structure and an open mind. And yes, how wonderful we're doing this in front of my altar, because when I'm trying to create magic, right? When I'm trying to manifest something, there are always going to be rules and laws to that. Like, what kind of crystal do you want to use? Certain crystals have certain properties. What kind of herbs do you want to use? Certain herbs have certain properties. If you use an herb that doesn't have the property that is in alignment with what you want to manifest or feel or bring into the world, then that's not going to happen. So Richard Rudd also describes language as being one of the subtlest structures that we have in the world. So when you are in the gift of realism, you can also master language, because you know that language holds frequency, and it's frequency that holds the energy of change. And I made a video with Cindy the other day, who is a human design guide on my team, not the other day, actually, many months ago, talking about how language creates your reality. So if this interests you in any way, I highly recommend that you check out that video as well. Links in the description box below, so you can kind of understand how, I think it's really related to Gene Key 60 here, and how language can create your reality because of the frequency of it. Just like a magician is able to distract us while he's performing the actual show, he has to do certain tricks and movements and, whatever it is he's doing to distract us from what he's actually doing, so that we come back to the real stunt and we're like, whoa, that's magical, right? Because he's able to distract us a little bit. Language can also kind of do that. It can be used in a way where people don't realize this, but the moment they're listening, or reading a certain word or sentences, something is being transmuted into them. Something's being, an energy is being passed into them, and it goes unnoticed, and something changes inside of them. When you are in the gift of realism, you also are able to accept and understand the uncertainties of life, because that's realism. Life is uncertain. And of course, you guys have all heard this quote that says the only thing that's certain in life is uncertainty. That's realism. You understand that there will be natural periods in your life where nothing seems to be moving, nothing seems to be happening, but what happens with our mood and our emotions during those periods will give rise to bursts of sudden manifestation. You understand that there is magic in the darkness before the manifestation. And last but not least, we come back to the term common sense. Common sense is not in opposition to magic. Common sense means that you, with the gifts of realism, remain open-minded to everything in the universe because you understand that everything has its own, that everything at its core has its own wondrous light. So let's move on to the Siddhi of Justice. And like I mentioned with all my Jinkies video, I don't want to go too deep into the Siddhi or talk too much about it because the Siddhi is an enlightened state of being where you don't really have to do anything anymore. And when you are constantly living in the frequency of the gift, the Siddhi will kind of dawn upon you. And the Siddhi here is called justice. So the word justice here is maybe not what we generally refer to as justice. But justice here, Richard describes it as more of divine justice. And if you think about the cuckoo bird, that to me feels like divine justice. Richard describes when you're in the Siddhi of justice that there are certain fundamental laws that govern your physical existence, your DNA, your genetics. They become more loosened and sometimes they are broken altogether because this gene key is associated with and represents the pure material density of Gaia. So Gaia, there's many different ways of representing Gaia. There's the pure material density of Gaia, which is this gene key. There's also the more, inspirational magic encoded within Gaia. But this gene key, the 60th, represents the pure material density of Gaia herself, the earthy density, the gravity of Gaia. So we are talking about the ability to have frame shift mutation when it comes to the Siddhi of Justice. Richard describes that the true concept of justice is not bound by laws at all. It is acausal by nature. It means that it happens for no reason that we can see or understand. So in an acausal reality, causes don't lead to effect. So that is the divine justice. And that is not justice that we can easily understand in the world today. So there are two laws that we can break when it comes to justice and the material density of Gaia. The first law that we can break is the laws of right and wrong and good and bad and fair and unfair. So the first law that we can break when it comes to the material density of Gaia is the law of time. So what this means is that sometime in the future when we've, as human beings really, evolved into a different state of being, we will be able to travel through time. The second law that we're able to break when it comes to the pure material density of Gaia is the law of gravity. So that means that at some point in our evolution, we will not be held down by gravity anymore. We will be floating. And of course, just like with the idea behind gene key number 3 that I made many years ago, I highly recommend that you check out that as well because it forms the 360 channel to this one. But the idea of the double helix in our DNA will change and become a triple helix. So it's no longer a binary structure, but a trinary helix. The triple helix will be a new structure within our DNA that allows us to unite with everything in the cosmos and allow us to travel through space and time. So that's what's going on with our physical evolution, as according to this gene key, of course. So that's my transmission for you today, beautiful souls. If you have this archetype, then do comment below and let us know what your experiences have been. If you like this video, then give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you haven't. If you already subscribed, then thank you very much for coming along and watching my videos. I appreciate you all so much. I love you all so much. If you like the content that I put out and the effort that I've put into my videos, then you can also give me a super thanks somewhere in the tabs below. I would appreciate it so much as well. And that's it, beautiful souls. I'll be back with another gene key video really soon and sending you all so much love and justice today. Bye.